What is up, everyone? I think we might officially be live again. Let's double check. I had to restart my broadcast, but I'm back and I am, in fact, sick. Like I said a minute ago, we will see how long I make it for. Maybe I die, maybe I don't. Let's do it though. I'm going to share this link with my group. One of my things that I always talk about is I want to teach people how to think. We're going to talk about the macro market. We're going to talk about the bear aspect of the market. And we're ultimately going to talk about how we can put ourselves in a place to navigate it in the best possible place. There we go. Okay, so if you're watching this, just give me a live down below. Let me know that you're here live with me. If you're watching the replay, just give me a replay down below. And if you like what I put out, just make sure you like the broadcast and subscribe to it. So that way I know that people are actually paying attention and they like what I'm putting out. So first thing I kind of want to look at, and I'm going to share my screen in just a second once I get everything all set up, is just sort of the rankings on crypto. So we've got the rankings, and what we're kind of looking at here is basically a bloodbath. I mean, nothing really looks good. When you look at how things are down, we've got Bitcoin down 28% in the last 7 days, 15% in 24 hours alone. We've got Ethereum down about 17%. We've got BNB down about 13%. What I think is interesting is when you look at some of these larger coins, you've got like Bitcoin down 28%, ETH down 35%. BNB down 24. BNB has been a pretty decent hedge, but nothing really is holding up that well in this market. We're starting to get near like a $20 Solana, like a $5 Polkadot, $6 Polkadot. I mean, in my opinion, I'm not in accumulation phase yet, so I'm not really at a point where I want to buy alts because they're going to keep bleeding. And I think when you think about the bear market, we typically have a few phases. Like phase one is January, where there's a capitulation, but it's not really bad. And then we kind of rise up and there's some hope that there's going to be progress. Then phase two is where we're at right now, where it's just big, giant, massive candles that make everybody question their existence. And so that's kind of where we're at now, where you just get beaten down and destroyed by red candles. Now, I've been shorting the market, so it makes it a little bit better because you can make money by shorting this stuff. You can short these things and you can win. In a bear market, you short everything. In a bull market, you long everything. So you can short and win the market, but most people aren't. So they just see these red candles and they like sit in their shower and cry. And I do want to say that a lot of people do struggle with their emotions in this period. And so I know I'm making light of it, but at the same time, a lot of people start questioning what they did. They start questioning their livelihood. They start questioning what's going on. They want to sell, they panic, and it goes over their entire kind of mindset. And I think we have to start to think logically. So when I said we went through phase one, this is phase two with like big red beefy candles. The next phase would ultimately be phase three. So phase two, we slice through that 200-day moving average, come back up, stabilize right there. And then we go sideways for like 9 months, 6 to 9 months, who knows how long we go for, but at least 6 months. We go sideways and then we all just die of boredom. But that's the beautiful time when we can start accumulating. That's when we've stabilized. That's when we start moving sideways. That's when everything sort of just doesn't do anything. We can accumulate Bitcoin. We can accumulate the alts. We can accumulate ETH and ultimately be in a really good position. Now, right now, for me, it's accumulation for Bitcoin and a little bit of ETH, but mostly Bitcoin, because I know that Bitcoin is going to have the least amount of downside and it'll ultimately stabilize the market. I'm not going to accumulate anything else at this point. My goal is not to get any alts, because what typically happens after phase two, when we have this massive capitulation, is we're going to see a lot of alts die. We're going to see a lot of projects die. I mean, the Celsius thing that's going on, that company's starting to fall apart and die. A lot of companies will die at the end of phase two when money starts running dry. That's why we wait till phase three, which is the accumulation phase, to really start jumping into stuff, because we're going to figure out who the survivors are. And if we haven't died of boredom in that realm, we can ultimately collect a lot of coins. We can ultimately collect a good collection and have just a massive capability to create huge wealth when the bull market starts again. The other thing to think about right now is we have the macro market as a whole sort of going down. And I'll go over that in a minute on the charts. But the big problem that we have with the macro market right now is we are seeing stocks and everything in sort of a macro bearish market. We have stocks that are literally just about to touch the 200-week moving average, which is indicative on stocks to be the bottom of a bear market. Now, when I say that, it doesn't mean it's just going to hit it and clip up. Often what will happen, and if you look at the COVID crash, with like Bitcoin, it hit it, went through it, then came back up and stabilized on it. So that's kind of what we can expect. But this macro bearish market will be interesting in how it plays out with crypto, because crypto has really only ever existed in an upright bull market. Crypto has not existed in a bearish market where the market just nosedives and falls apart. So it'll be really interesting to see how crypto and how coins behave in this market, to where the overall market is getting wrecked at the same time as the crypto market. So kind of something to pay attention to. But when we look at everything, there's really not a lot of good stuff to say about where we're at. If we look at stable coins, let's go into a watch list. This watch list is actually public. But when we go into stable coins, it's a good indicator of like what's falling apart. We're looking at Tether's been in 0.9986. It's sort of fallen off peg. It hasn't quite been able to move back up to the dollar, but it's been sitting here in this zone. US dollar coin's always strong at $1. Binance US dollar is strong at $1. DAI's strong at $1. True US dollars backed 1-to-1 by dollars. It's usually at $1. Like these four are kind of gold standard right now. A lot of people are afraid of Tether because of FUD and their lack of transparency, which is understandable. But True, DAI, Binance, and US dollar coin kind of seem to be the sort of gold standard right now. We've got USDD that's a little bit off peg. A lot of Terra, obviously, way off peg. Frax is doing okay. It's not too bad. A lot of these coins, Magic Internet Money actually holds quite well. Mai's actually back up. It was off peg. Day's fallen off peg. They're supposed to have a plan to fix that. So stable coins are doing okay. The ones that are top tier are doing all right. Even the one USDD, which is an algorithmic coin similar to like UST, isn't doing horrible. But I mean, same thing with Luna. I just got to be careful in this kind of stuff. They claim they have a decentralized reserve, but it's still an algorithmic stablecoin. When we start selling Bitcoin, it's kind of brings the market down, and it could lead to a death spiral. So just something to be careful with on that as well. When we look at DeFi, 81.97 billion. I think last time I looked at this last week, it was in the 100 billion. So we were at like 112 billion. We're down to 85. So in a bear market, DeFi gets wrecked. People get out, they run away, and DeFi, all the protocols that are just fluff and giving out free coins and stuff get wrecked and die. And then when we start stabilizing, the protocols that are still around will be the ones that sort of are still good and profitable and running like actual businesses. So we're going to start to see stuff like that. It's just DeFi is red across the board. Just Lend is basically the lending platform for USDD Tron. So that's kind of why they're positive. Frax, for whatever reason, is doing all right. Frax is, I think, a pretty good project / coin. When we look at ecosystems in DeFi, let's go to our chains. Ecosystems in DeFi, everything's pretty much getting wrecked. ETH is down to 52 billion in total locked value. Binance, we're at 6 billion. Tron has become the number 3, 4 billion because of their stable coin. AVAX down to 2. Solana getting crushed 2. Polygon, just like the top ones here, just nothing's looking super great. One thing I was talking about last time was optimism maybe being sort of something to look out for, because it's new and a lot of protocols are moving over there, and a lot of protocols that are profitable and should survive the bear. So might see some cool stuff over the summer, or when we get into that like phase 3 die of boredom zone. So that'll be something interesting to watch. Elrond literally has one protocol. So, I mean, something to look out for, but something that only has one, in my opinion, is probably not the best place to park. Elrond's supposed to be a great chain. It's just kind of like Cardano. It's how do you even use the thing? Outside of that, DeFi is really not looking too great. But when I do look at things to accumulate in the accumulation phase, what I look at are what are the platforms in terms of like layer 1s and layer 2s that are doing really well. And we can say, okay, Binance coin, obviously Tron, AVAX, Solana, Polygon, CRO, Phantom. Arbitrum doesn't even have a coin. Waves is a little bit scary. So, I mean, I would look at like these top ones right here as kind of what I would start accumulating when we get to accumulation phase. The other one I might look at down the road is optimism, kind of based on how it goes. But that's kind of what DeFi looks like. Now let's go to the overall market. So when we look at where Bitcoin itself is at, and let me check if there's any questions in here. Let's go over to any questions, drop those down below. There's a couple of people watching. If you're liking what I'm putting out, put love it down below so I know you guys like what I'm putting out. And let me know if there's any questions. Drop those in the comments. We're going to go through the markets now. So when we look at the markets themselves, let's see the advanced chart. the advance is just like the regular chart. But when we look at it, what I've been talking about a lot is this 200-week moving average that typically provides a decent level of support. And as you can see, this daily candle, I think this is honestly the worst candle we've seen since the COVID crash, which was pretty bad. But I mean, look at that monster from this one candle from, what are we at? Our peak, 26.8 all the way down to 22.24. That's incredible. I mean, I can tell you, I started shorting somewhere around right here. And then I shorted all the way till about right here because I wasn't going to short into the 200-day and get wicked up and get wrecked. But that was a good moneymaker. And so when we look at this in comparison to like the COVID crash, the COVID crash was like 2020. Let's see if we can find it. The COVID crash was right here, March 2020. So we've got big, giant, beefy candle that dropped it from, let's see, 9,148 down to 3,932. And then we've got the bearish market crash that dumped it. This might be bigger. So just in comparison, this is a pretty significant decline. And that's why I think this is like phase two. Phase one is like January, like, oh, hey, we have a little dump, but we're not quite dead yet. So that's January. And then we have a few months of, hey, look, there's some hope. There's some hope. Nope. Death, death, death. And then ultimately the final death candle. And that doesn't mean this is literally the final candle. What will probably happen is we'll probably puncture through this to like 19. My lowest point is somewhere around like 14, and then we should push back up and stabilize here. Now, a caveat that I've been kind of thinking about is we are in a macro sort of bear market in stocks, and Bitcoin hasn't existed in that. So we have to pay attention to that because that could potentially drive this a lot lower. But the same sort of idea stands in stocks as well. When something gets near that 200-week moving average, it might slice under, but it's ultimately going to stabilize in that zone because that's kind of the indicator of the bottom of a bear market. So where we're at now, it appears that it's 5:10. I believe the daily candle is actually closed. Let's go check it out. Yeah, so we closed the daily candle. It's like, for the love of God, close this thing and stop shorting the market. But we went all the way down to 21.9 and we pushed back up to about 22.6. So what that tells me is it still doesn't look super strong coming into this sort of daily. It's green, but we're only 10 minutes in. After coming off of this, there could be a little bit of a rebound. I could potentially see a rebound somewhere in the 24 to like 25 zone. Go to the 4 hour. I like looking at the 4 hour a lot. We still don't have a lot of good like wicks. We don't have anything that's a decent wick. When we look at this one over here, the first time we touched 25, we had this nice like wick. A lot of people wanted to buy and take advantage of that dip. We don't have that here. When we look at like let's go back and look at the COVID crash. And kind of see where that took us. But when we look back at the COVID crash, we had a decent wick that eventually drove that back up. So COVID crash had this nice like meaty wick. So it went, and the thing about the COVID crash too that's interesting here that I'm paying attention to is notice during the COVID crash, we did go well below that 200-week moving average. I mean, well below it. So we sliced through it and then sliced right back up. So what happened was we dumped through that, which I'm kind of leaning toward the idea that this is probably going to happen here. We're going to slice through it, and then we're going to have a huge wick that drives us back over it. So I could see that happening and then produce a good wick here. So us like breaking through it, falling all the way down to like that 14K zone, maybe even, and then pushing all the way back up in a single wick. So I think that's something to look out for and pay attention to, because I think there's a very real possibility that that could happen. Because like I said, it still doesn't look like we have. And look, this is that's that previous wick. Let's see if we can find the COVID wick on the daily. That was right here, I think. Yeah, 2020. So we had this thing just get wrecked. And like I said, we sliced straight through it, and then we went on the 12th, and then on the 13th, we continued to go through it, but then we wicked all the way back up to it. And then we spent 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 days trying to fight to get back above it because it became resistance. And then we went above it. We had a nice wick all the way back up to our first log zone. And then it pushed us down to retest, came back up, retest, and then we all died of boredom until it finally came back up. And so it was like March until April when it was able to finally clear and actually start its actual sort of, I guess, next phase, because it finally went into the new log zone. So we could see a situation like that. And the reason I think like that could be an option is because we still don't have a really good wick on this thing. I mean, this does not look healthy yet. So what I think could possibly happen is we sort of drive here and then we fall way below it, and way below it. Maybe it's just 19. Maybe we fall below, we touch 19, and then that pushes us all the way back up, and then we fight it for 7 days or however long it takes. And then we start moving forward, because once we clear that, then we start paving the way to go from this next log zone, which is like 29. And then we probably go like this, up and down for months and months, and we all die of boredom. So that's kind of where I think we might head. I mean, who knows? Maybe we'll get lucky and it'll just not. But I think what's going to happen is we are going to touch. We're probably going to break through this and wick off, and then come back up and sort of test this new 200-week resistance zone, clear it, and then start moving sideways for eternity. So something to look out for. And when we do that and we start moving sideways for eternity, then I think what happens is we are in accumulation zone. We're not there yet, and I don't know if this will happen today. We may go sideways like this for 7 days and then fall through. It's hard to tell right now, but with the macro headwinds of the market, I think the Fed's probably going to raise rates by 75 basis points this time rather than rather than a half. So it doesn't really seem like we have a lot of good news coming out. We only have bad news coming out, which in a bear market gives you these big beefy candles. So I will have my shorting pants on, and I will be ready to short the market until the market tells me that we're going to go sideways and die of boredom. Then when we do that, I will just play in the range. We'll short, long, short, or we'll long, short, long, short, long, short, long, short until we accumulate 27 Bitcoin in a bear market just on accident. So that's pretty much where I think we're at with Bitcoin. ETH is in the same place. Obviously, ETH, everything depends on Bitcoin, but ETH, it actually looks better. It's looked better because ETH fell through its 200 week, and then it wicked all the way back up, and now it's sitting here. So it looks similar. It just has a bigger, meatier candle, in my opinion. So ETH is in the same position. We could see ETH go same thing as Bitcoin, where 1192 dumped to 1107. If Bitcoin goes down further, like I was saying, ETH's next sort of safe haven is probably like 800. Let's look on the monthly. And I don't want to make any crazy outlandish predictions, but this stuff is real. So a lot of people measured ETH's last tip off of this candle, but that's the wick. That's not the meat of the candle. I wouldn't measure ETH or the last top off that. Yeah, that was the high, but that's not what the meat of the action was. The meat of the action was right here. So like 1192. So we're still above that. The 200-week moving average is sort of right where we're sitting here, like 1207, 1192-ish. But this 1107 zone here, like 1107, is where the meat of the action from the last bull run happened. So that should prove to be a pretty strong base of support. Now, if Bitcoin gets wrecked for a little bit, we could possibly go down to the next zone, which is like 849. For me, these are good accumulation zones for ETH. I don't see us going much lower than that. I mean, I don't want to speculate on something I can't really speculate on because I don't know, but I can say that we have the 1192 is sort of the 1107 zone, and then we have the like 849 zone. I think if Bitcoin wicks down to 19, we probably see the 1107 zone get hit and penetrated. If Bitcoin goes down to like 14 for whatever reason, then we probably see this get hit. So something to look out for ETH. Most coins right now, I'm not really interested in. I mean, all of them don't really look great. This is the monthly. But even if we go on the daily for BNB, just not a good time for me to accumulate alts. I know I've been talking about how I like the idea of BNB. It's actually holding up fairly well. Honestly, this is its previous low. It hasn't even wicked to that yet. And I think that's becoming a good hedge because Binance is such a strong company. And I think FTX and the FTX coin probably in the same position. So that's an interesting one. But right now, for me, it's just not the best time to accumulate alts just because they're just going to keep getting wrecked until Bitcoin stabilizes and moves sideways and we all die of boredom. So something to pay attention to. They literally every chart looks the same. Phantom looks okay. Mana actually held out kind of decently, but just not a good time to accumulate alts. Nothing really to talk about with alts. Let's go into stocks and see what not those stocks, the overall market. The Dow Jones had a pretty horrific day. So I've been talking about how we fell through this line of support I built, and then we were able to push above it. Then we actually went sideways above it for a minute. Now we dumped straight down. So stocks were getting close to this 200-week moving average that I've been sort of talking about. We're also kind of set on this logarithmic zone. So this is kind of like the last hope, I guess, for avoiding moving to the 200-week moving average. I still probably anticipate us hitting this. The market isn't looking great. The inflation is up. Things just aren't good. So I would anticipate the stock market moving to this zone. And in that anticipation, I would anticipate Bitcoin probably having that wick that I talked about a second ago as well. When we look at everything else, the NASDAQ, I mean, everything is moving towards that 200 week. It's legitimately just, I've said this in every video I think I've put out in the last, I don't know how many weeks, however long I've been doing this for, but I've said that we're going to probably move to this zone in stocks. And we are looking like we are going to move to the 200 week, which is indicative of a bottom in a bear market. So I think that's something to look out for. Even in stocks, when we move to the monthly and we start looking at, let me remove this rainbow thing. So even in stocks, when we start looking at some of these crashes, like this February COVID crash, stocks moved all the way below, just like Bitcoin did, wicked all the way down and then pushed all the way back up. So something to look out for. It took a whole month for it to actually get back through, and then another month. So it took a little bit of time for the stock market to 1, 2, 3 months to actually get its footing and start really driving again. So we could be looking at a scenario like that because we have a pretty significant macro environment and we have one beefy candle, which means we could probably look forward to another beefy candle coming up, which would push us below that. And then we take another month to drive up. So we're looking at another 2-3 months minimum of sort of bearish action, even in the stock market, unless something magical happens and everything's hunky-dory and everybody's happy again. But it doesn't really seem like we're headed in that direction. Let me see if there's any questions. If there's questions and you're watching this, just drop those down below. And if you think someone can benefit from this, just share this broadcast. Other thing, oil literally going parabolic. Oil's looking great. Unfortunately, for a lot of people, oil's starting to reach its previous highs from 2008. So looking at $147 a barrel. I mean, it already wicked up there once and it's looking like it wants to climb up there. So you can probably expect oil to continue driving up. It doesn't look super weak. It looks like it really wants to get higher. Dollar again, another indication, like last time I told you we hit and then we came back down. Well, guess what? We went parabolic again, went straight up, which tells me that people are running to the dollar as sort of a safe haven asset, which means it's stronger against other foreign currencies. And then when the dollar is going like this, it means that Bitcoin is going to go down. Bitcoin has an inverse relationship with the dollar typically. So until that starts to move back down, I think we've got a problem here in terms of the direction that Bitcoin would head, or Ethereum, or any of the coins. Outside of that, I kind of think that's basically where the market is at. If you're watching this and you have questions, drop those down below. I'm starting to lose my voice. I'm barely getting it back. I kind of sound like the Crypt Keeper. But if you have any questions, let me know. Just drop those down in the comments. If you're watching this live, just let me know. Are you live? Just give me a live in the comments. If you're watching this after the fact, give me a hashtag replay in the comments. And if you're watching this after I'm off live, then just drop your questions and what your number one biggest takeaway is in the comments. All right. I will talk to you all later.